The pole boat moved like a dark thought along the green blood, low and patient, its planks taking the river's slow pulse. The ferryman, brown as the reeds and nearly as silent, shifted his pole with a practiced economy that had in it no eagerness for destination, as if the act of going were its own reward and the ache in the shoulders part of the river's due. A lantern swung at the prow, an orange eye unblinking against the wind that crawled the water. Off in the darkness frogs throbbed, and once the dull plash of something heavy turning beneath, the roll of a lazy fish, the idea of a crocodile told in whispers by caravans who'd never seen one, a drowned man, memory surfacing and subsiding. Tyrion Lannister sat hunched in the shelter the ferryman called a cabin, but which he, with less generosity, named a box. The roof was a piece of oiled canvas that leaked in two predictable places. He had placed his satchel beneath him as a cushion. The satchel had been packed for exile by a man who had killed his father before taking his leave of the capital, the sort of sentence that sounded like a play when he rehearsed it in his head, and like a confession when he dared to say it aloud in the precise silence of night. He had been given the satchel by another man, a spider with an ear in every kitchen and a friend in every privy. There were 2 shirts of good linen in it, and a purse whose contents clinked when provoked, and a knife with a narrow grip accommodating his crooked fingers, and a folded square of parchment bearing no seal at all. When he unfolded it, even in the lightless box the ink rose from the page as if it had heat. 2 lines, the letters straight as a tower's stones. Go south. The sun is patient there. It was not signed, but then it didn't need to be. He could hear the voice that had arranged those strokes as swim-like whispers behind a veil, useless for comfort, but a provocation to move. He thought of Varys sometimes, with gratitude and suspicion weighing each other like mismatched stones in opposite pans of a scale. In the memory, those pans never settled. On the pole, he heard the ferryman shift. Tyrion looked at the door flap as another bead of water fell through, landed on his breeches, and rolled indifferent to his importance, such as it still was. He could drink, he thought. He could drink and collapse into the thready cradle of sleep and let the river run beneath him like a second skin. He could drink for the rest of his short life and have done with the effort to arrange those days into coherent acts. Instead, he rested the hand, not holding his knife, on the purse and counted his breaths. The green blood smelled of mud and green things torn. The canvas smelled of tar and the ghost of spice. The air had a particular lightness to it, a springiness like a juggler's step. He had been told Dorne would smell of orange blossoms and women with hair like midnight, that the sand there was hotter and finer and somehow less honest than the sand elsewhere, that their wine had a throat like silk and a memory like salt. He had heard it said that Dorne remembered, and when it remembered, it did not forgive. This last had something in it to hang a hope upon. He was not sure whether it was Dorne's memory he would anchor himself to, or his own. The ferryman's pole struck bottom with a sound like a cough. The boat shrugged. Tyrion eased himself to the door, pushed the fabric aside, and let the humid dark greet him, and in it the ferryman's inked face and one white grin like a small thing carved from driftwood. "Planky town 'tis up," the ferryman murmured. "2 bends. How many bends does a man make on this river before he has a chance to stand on something that doesn't move?" The ferryman considered, as if the question were not jest but a matter of old accounting. "Depends whose feet," he said. "Depends whose river, too. The green blood answers to the green blood." "What a comfort," Tyrion said. "And is the Planky town as notorious as its name implies?" The ferryman's grin widened, then receded like a tide. "Notorious, no. Notorious is for kings. Planky town is planks and boats and folk who live there. And who will look at me and see mischief. And coin," the ferryman added. "You put those 2 words like old friends." "They are," the ferryman said. "If you get them on a boat quick." The lantern winked on a world of slow-moving black water, mud shore and stilted houses on the low bank ahead like a broken jaw of teeth. The green blood made its mouth where it wanted. It had 2 mouths here, and both spoke brine and silt and the language of ships that had learned to float on fashionable seas and on rivers that told their own jokes. Tyrion had concealed his name since the last doorway of the capital closed behind him. The ferryman knew him as Yoren. No, that was someone else's ghost. He knew him as Tom, which was no one's. He checked himself when he rose, because he had nearly said to the ferryman, "Well then, good ferryman, let us find your planky town a mooring for mischief and coin." And although the jest would have pleased him, he had a sense of being observed at odd hours by the gods of petty survival, whom he had offended often and without even the dignity of arrogance. He stepped onto the wet dock, his legs performing their old comedy of one short step and one shorter, and the ferryman made a fussy little business with the line and the pole and his patience. Up on the dock, a woman carrying a basket of clams looked down at Tyrion and then away with as much interest as she spared a gull perched on a piling. Another man in a loose shirt sat mending nets with a plainer concentration, his hands reading the tangles like a book. There were children. Some argued. Some slept in hollows of coiled rope as if those were their mothers. A tangle of boats made a neighborhood where people stepped from one deck to another the way landwalkers crossed courtyards. The ferryman touched Tyrion's shoe. "Are lightly." His hand was rough and smelled of the green blood. Tyrion's own hand smelled like ink, even when he had not held a quill. "You said you wanted to find the one with the straight back," the ferryman said. "I distinctly recall asking for someone with patience and a sense for patterns," Tyrion replied, "and a seat in a cool room. And I told you we had such chairs in Sunspear," the ferryman said, "and such backs to sit in them." "Then take me to the beginning of Sunspear," Tyrion said. "Let us go to the straight-backed patience." A boat took them not to a grand terrace, but to a smaller boat still, narrow as a thought, where two men worked a double scull. The green blood opened itself with grace, as if amused by these small urgencies that crawled it like insects. Tyrion watched the houses on sticks become a rumor, then a rumor's memory. He thought of King's Landing as one might think of a wound under a linen shirt, present always, prone to reopen, not to be prodded. He had left behind a mother of sorts, a city that had given him his sharpness as much as it had given him his cynicism. The city had also put a woman in his bed who called him her lion. It had then put his father in her bed for reasons dull in their inevitability. He had killed both that night, not the city, though he might have liked to wake one morning to a shore where a capital had gone the way of last season's tide. They changed onto yet another boat. Boats nested boats. The ferryman grew in his manner as one grows when he believes he has made a good decision days ago, and that decision is now paying him in coin and satisfaction. Tyrion watched the river skin. The illusion of stillness from the bank became a frank statement of motion when one sat in it. The green blood was always moving. He wondered which of the gods of Dorne ruled this river. He realized he did not know Dorne's gods, and it startled him like the sudden recollection of a debt. When the river broadened and slowed in a kind of sigh, the ferryman said, almost respectfully, as if announcing a person and not a place, "The water gardens." Dawn had been an idea beyond the trees. Now it began to collect on the flat water and lay a sheen over it like oil. The water gardens rose not from a cliff like a challenge, but from the very surface of the world as an answer. Domes and low colonnades and courtyards lay at ease, with the air moving through them, making itself their guest and their master. It was not the display of a man who wished to be seen as powerful. Rather, it was the labor of someone who wanted to be happy, and to be seen to make others so. Tyrion felt a little sneer try to lift itself in him, and then he felt something else press it down. The boat scraped stone. The ferryman stepped ashore and offered a hand that he did not need. Tyrion took it anyway, not as courtesy but as experiment in trusting his weight to strangers. A man with a beard like a trimmed hedge stood waiting, his face carved with the patient alertness Tyrion had seen in bodyguards who had already given half their life to someone and undertook now to give the rest with method. The long axe in his hands was unadorned. The hands that held it were not. "You are come early," the bearded man said. His voice had the low command of a drum played with the palm. "A dawn arrival is a courtesy I had not expected. I found dawn is where many a disaster begins, Captain." Tyrion smiled as he had when he still believed in that weapon. "Have I the honor?" His eyes struck the newcomer and held there, as calm as old stone. "You may call me Hoda," he said. "I will not tell you what others call me." "I suspect they call you Sir," Tyrion said. "They do when they remember," Hoda replied. The prince waits. He does not wait well, but he waits. Then I should crown myself with gratitude, Tyrion said. I have a talent for giving people reasons to be done waiting. Hoda turned with an ease that betrayed constant practice. He led. Tyrion followed, counting the steps in part to convince himself he was being led, rather than dragged by fate. They entered through shadow. The heat of the gardens was a living thing, not merely air. Water moved everywhere, not like a sea where motion is the purpose, but as if here water joined in the making of a palace, finished the work that stone and wood had begun. Children's laughter came sharp as little bells from somewhere near. Tyrion turned his head and saw them. Small bodies, brown and pink, some with hair plastered, some with hair in proud, needless braids, splashing in shallow tiled pools, watched by women with bowls of fruit and no swords, men with towels and eyes like wolves. He was shown into a room whose shutters were open to an inner court. The scent of fruit and the faint itch of citrus laid upon the air like a blessing. A figure sat in the chair near the window. He was heavy not with the weight of eating or idleness but with gout, the quiet anchor that ties a man to his seat and to patience. His hands lay on the chair's arms. The fingers were thick with that tenderness that can be mistaken for a noble softness by those who do not know the price of waiting. The man's face might have, on first glance, seemed smooth, but there were fine lines at the corners of eyes that had spent years watching without being seen to watch. He wore a robe the color of cream. A small orange blossom had fallen from somewhere and lodged on his shoulder, and he had not brushed it away. A boy stood behind him with a fan. The boy's eyelids drooped with the seriousness of his duty. "Lord Tyrion," the man said. The words were instruments, not greeting alone. Or should I say, "What name have you brought into my house, my gardens?" "If you say my true name, your grace," Tyrion said, "you will see the water grow impatient and the palms lean in. Perhaps they are romantics here." The prince's mouth tilted. A house guest apostrophizing the flora. "Dorne will be entertained, if nothing else." He gestured with his chin at a second chair, lower and not so wide. "Sit if it suits you. Standing is a cruelty I do not inflict on visitors." Tyrion moved carefully to the chair. The boy's fan continued at its steady, measured rhythm. He planted both feet and allowed his weight to settle and felt his bones register their surprise. He had not sat in a chair that did not try to throw him in some days. Here the chair was perfectly indifferent. "I am Dorne Martell," the prince said after a pause the length of 3 fan strokes. "You know of me, I think." "I know the story they tell," Tyrion said. "A patient man who keeps oranges and accounts. And you are the story of a sharp man who has lost patience and found weapons," Dorne said. "We will neither of us be fully the other's story when we are done speaking." A longer pause. The fan kept water-swallowed time. "You used a bolt." "Yes." "And a chain." "Yes," Tyrion said. "I have been accused of chaining men to chairs before, but never with such consequence." "Your father died as some men live," Dorne said, his gaze not unkindly curious. "On a privy. I hope you will forgive the plainness." "I hope he did not," Tyrion said. He held the prince's eyes. "Plainness is a vocation here, I take it." "Not always." Dorne lifted slow fingers. He plucked the fallen blossom from his shoulder and let it fall to the floor, not as a gesture of disdain but because a thing had taken its place, and he chose not to carry both. "Sometimes we embroider, we carve, we drop petals where a footprint will step. Sometimes we do nothing and allow our friends to call it a kind of art." Now he looked across the courtyard to where a child, legs the thickness of a wrist, splashed and fell and came up spitting and laughing. "My brother believed in suddenness. I believe in preparation. Both are useful. Unfortunately, we cannot both be my brother." Tyrion waited for a name, a ghost. It came softly as the drift of the fan. "Oberyn. He died." "He did. A Lannister killed him," Tyrion said, and tasted the crude satisfaction of paying a debt with a coin that was not his. "A Clegane killed him," Dorne said. "A mountain who called himself a man. Of late, It is the fashion in the rest of Westeros to confuse one family with the entire world. The prince sipped something the color of late day from a glass. Dorne is smaller. We cannot afford such confusions. I apologize for the attempt then, Tyrion said, folding his hands as best as his bones let him. It was not an argument. It was a fissure across which words sometimes leap at the wrong angle. It was a thought, Doran agreed. Thoughts are allowed. We have many here. We do not always share them with those who come to visit. He put the glass aside, and the boy lifted it with the importance of a page and disappeared. You have brought me yourself. An odd gift. It is like giving a man a raven and saying the message is in its feathers. Tyrion set a coin free in his own palm and covered it, then uncovered it. It was a Braavosi coin, Varys's doing, a language of trade to which everyone had a phrasebook. The message is not in me. I am only the ink. Varys wrote the letter. Your own friends may have told you of my leave-taking. I doubt there are many in King's Landing who have not told someone, or will tell someone soon. There are few in King's Landing they have not told, Doran allowed himself. A capital is a house where every room has a door to the same corridor, and no locks. He inclined his head as if acknowledging a musician's bowed string. Varys trusts that I will not pour you into a clay jar and send you back to the city to be planted as a vine that will yield him some dark fruit? Varys trusts that you are a certain kind of patient. Tyrion swallowed. The memory of the ally whose bed he had invaded sat across this courtyard in the shape of a child. It would not serve to have his tongue too dry. He accepted the wine the boy brought him and drank it in measured interest. There was a promise in it of something that is not sweetness and not bitterness, but the word both flavors say when they agree to amplify each other. I have not come to ask for a bed. I should hope not. In Dorne we find men less comfortable on featherbeds than in baths, and I would not like to add to your discomforts. The prince watched him again. The years had given Doran a face that could hold several expressions within the same glance, the way a deep pool holds several currents at once. You've come to ask me to hate for you. I bring you opportunities, Tyrion said. Hate is for people who can afford to burn their houses to heat their bathwater. I have come because the north has been cut and the wound has not stopped bleeding, because your house has a reason to dislike mine, and more reason to dislike how mine behaves when it thinks no one is watching. Because my city told the world that a young woman married to me was a criminal. Because if ever there was a season to put the Boltons in the pillory and make Casterly Rock stand on ice, it is this one. I have come because there is a world beyond King's Landing, and I thought Dorne might like to purchase their share in it at a price that does not involve dragonfire, since our supply is presently limited. An energetic catalog, Doran said almost gently, and somewhere among the items, a woman made a widow on her wedding day and a baby whose head is a memory under a cloak. He held Tyrion's eyes with a mildness that made the air shift. You will forgive me if I keep my own ledger. You will forgive me if I attempt to add a line to it in the currency of possible futures, Tyrion replied. What line? A marriage line. A line that joins the sun to a direwolf. Tyrion let the words rest in the room a moment. The north cannot be bought new out of the weirwood, but certain bits of it can be recovered. A girl made a widow without consummation, although I suppose you might say I was a worse husband for having refused to be a husband. We can argue the point later. She can be found. If you will lend the necessary vessels, ships and persons, you can be promised a road north through the Vale in due course, or something better. A realm that will honor its friends and have a memory of who stood near it when the knives were still wet. Sansa Stark, Doran said. He spoke it not as if naming a plan, but as if naming a river inevitable with a particular current. Tyrion drank. He tasted not only the wine, but the fruits and the skins those fruits had grown in, the oils in them. He set down the glass. You see the raven, then. You are quick to the point of frightening me. I am slower than you would like, and quicker than you will admit, and neither of these is a virtue. Doran turned his face to the courtyard, and something in the line of his nose and mouth made his likeness to his brother appear and vanish like a fish turning. If the girl is where I suspect, if Peter Baelish has her in the Vale and is making her feel safe enough to harden into the shape he has in mind for her, then your road is steeper than you describe, and I do not send my people up slopes without a soft rope to pull them back with when they slip." His fingers flexed once. He did not look at the fan, but the fan hesitated all the same. "Peter and I have a history," Tyrion said. "So do I, and I often. But I know what he likes and what he thinks he likes. If a rumor of Dorne were to brush the ears of certain singers in the Vale, if a promise of lemons were to travel with a traveling spice merchant to the mountain roads, if the right boy were to sing a song in the right square on a foolish afternoon, a girl who baked lemon cakes when she was unhappy might look up, and might find in the world beyond her window not only a new song but an old name held up not as a cudgel but as a door latch. I cannot say precisely how we will open the door. I can say that if we do not, there will be blood spilled on the stairs that lead up to that door. Yours, mine, others' blood has a way of taking an interest when plans run out of breath. My daughters like lemon cakes," Doran said, meditative. In the background, one of the girls squealed, "As do their friends. A door latch, you say?" Now he looked straight at Tyrion. "What do you ask me for? Coins are stones in a riverbed. Ships are oars in hands. Men are sons and brothers and fathers. What do you require of Dorne, which has more patience than swords? I want a promise you can keep with letters before you keep with steel. Send envoys, not to the capital but to White Harbor, to Oldcastle, to places where the North has a taste for commerce with the South and a memory for slights. Send them not with banners but with debt relief and saltfish, with oranges when oranges are rare. Send them with the small humilities of trade and the big arrogance of showing up when hurricanes know your name. Let them suggest that Dorne respects those who bury their dead with their names on their lips. Let them speak the old story, the one about Elia, quietly to the right ears. Let them say that if the North chooses to be itself, the sun will give it shade at noon and light at dawn. And allow me, for now, to write one letter and to speak one whisper in a particular ear in the Vale such that we begin to tilt that mountain a hair. The one letter to whom? A woman who taught me to walk in rooms where men believed they were alone," Tyrion said. "She is too proud to serve me entirely, and not so proud she will refuse to be amused when I fall on my face." His smile was half and not wholly convincing. "She knows songs and how to hum them on stairwells. And the one whisper?" Doran persisted, the phrase not a question but an extraction. "To a steward who used to be a boy in a household where no one noticed the boys. He noticed. He remembers the taste of meat at someone else's feast. In the Vale, he is perhaps allowed to polish silver. He can be given a reason to. Every open door is opened by a bored person. I have a gift for finding the right boredom. Every open door is opened by a bored person," Doran repeated very softly. "It is a poem, if not a truth." He closed his eyes briefly. Behind his lids he had an audience. His own fear and his own kindness, both in attendance. He opened them. "And what do you offer Dorne if we do these pretty things?" "Sweets and songs and ships we choose to send at our peril. For the princes in the capital like to count boats when they are not counting other men's sins. I offer you a chance to be nearer to your vengeance without making blood run in your pools," Tyrion said. "I offer you, eventually, the head of the monstrous man who did to your sister what he did to her. Whether that head speaks your name or not from the place it sits now. I offer you a hand in the cold earth of Winterfell when it is replanted, such that the first harvest remembers you. I offer you not a king but an alliance that would not care who calls himself a king in a keep that smells like burning fat. I offer you my mind." "Your mind has holes in it," Doran said. "The mind of a man who drinks." "I am trying to drink differently," Tyrion said. "More like a Dornishman and less like an orphaned goat." This might have been impertinent. Doran only looked at the glass in Tyrion's hand and then not at it at all. "Oberyn would have drunk with you until he found your bottom and then debated with you about how deep the river runs," he said. "I cannot be my brother. But I can ask you this. Will you allow us to keep you in one of our rooms for a time? Not a prison, no. A room where you may read and write and not be killed in your sleep. The Princess Arianne has eyes she is proud of, and she will put them on you. My daughters have tempers they do not hide. Men will look at you and decide to be either cautious or brave. If you will not run, and if you will not speak foolishly in Tej, wrong courtyard, Perhaps we can arrange to hang a lantern on the road you have described and see who steps into the light." Tyrion thought of how rooms behave when a man has killed his father with a crossbow. He thought of how rooms behave when a man is married to a girl who bakes lemon cakes. "A room would be a kindness," he said. "I have slept in many lately that were not, and I will be careful, though prudence is for those who have not learned it too late." "For those who have learned it too late, it is an art," Dorne said, and now he looked tired, as patients do, those who are on your side of the argument but who must go at the pace their bones enforce. When Tyrion had been shown to a room with a window like a painter's frame and a shelf of books that smelled of heat and dryness, he stood for a moment with his hand on his satchel and allowed himself no more than 3 breaths of something like relief. The river's sound was different here, not the throb and muddle of planks, but a continuous application of water being persuaded to be decorative. He pulled a book from the shelf and replaced it without seeing its title. He opened the satchel, took out the folded parchment, and turned it blank side up on the small table. He stared at its sheen and thought of letters, then gently set it aside in favor of a quill and inkstone left ready for a guest who might be a certain kind of guest. "Dear Elaine," he wrote on the first piece of fresh paper and paused, because he had at last a small happiness, a proof that he was indeed more devout than some in his worship of fiction. He wrote, and the words were not jokes. He wrote of lemon cakes without writing of lemon cakes, and of snow without naming the snow, and of how sometimes a girl looked out of a high window and saw only pine, and sometimes she looked out and saw not birds but the idea of birds, and sometimes at last she was made to see herself looking and grow bored of that and desire a new weather. He wrote of warmth without describing heat, and of the possibility that the world had a corner in it where a girl might remember a mother's face without it feeling like a failure. He did not write his name. He did not write where he wrote from. He folded carefully and sealed with a drop of candle wax pressed with a ring that did not say Tywin's son. When the small knock came at last, he said without false startlement, "Enter," and turned to see a woman who was the shape of Dorne itself, which is to say, a series of curves that were not apologies, and a poise like a psalm sung on a balcony. She was not a child. She was the age at which a woman stops being told who she is and begins to instruct others in the matter. Her hair was night, but not a favor to the poets. Her smile was undecided and therefore interesting. "You are my father's guest," she said. "I could not have put it better," Tyrion replied, standing to bow in such a way that conceded nothing to his stature and took nothing from her own. "I am Arian Martell," she said. "Lady," he said, "I was telling your father how fond I am of lemon cakes." He is accustomed to falsehoods, naturally, and smiled at me like a man who has heard that the moon is made of cheese and prefers not to be drawn into the debate. "I can provide lemon cakes for a man whose tongue appreciates more than one texture," Arian said. "But I came to ask why you have brought the word Stark across our borders." "Because the word carries weight even when the person does not," Tyrion said. "And there is a particular person whose life has become a letter folded in a place where 2 men think they are the only ones who know the words. It seemed unkind to the world to allow that letter to remain folded." She watched him with interest he had expected to be colored with contempt. It was colored with a dare instead. "You propose," she said, "to undo a marriage that makes us an enemy of my enemy, or to make the marriage useful. I cannot tell which proposition is more audacious." "Both are audacious," Tyrion agreed. "So perhaps the one we choose should be the one that makes the better story when told in winters." "It is always winter where the stories of the North are told," she said, but her tone was not cruel. "My father is patient. I am less so. My patience has not been rewarded." Her eyes flicked to the sealed letter on the table. "And he asks me to be his eyes. It is a joke we can all afford to laugh at." "Then perhaps use mine also," Tyrion said. "They have seen rooms where people do not say what they think, and rooms where people do not think what they say. It would be pleasant to be in a place with fruit and honest anger." "My anger is not patient," Arian said, and something in it was not boast but confession. "So much the better," Tyrion said. "We have a patient man to hold the rope and an impatient woman to climb, and a dwarf at the bottom who will shout when the holds are false. If we are to build a thing this absurd, we must at least enjoy the image of it. Her laughter came then, quick and bright. You are not what your city says you are. I am precisely what my city says I am, Tyrion said, smiling. Just less. When she had gone, leaving behind her a wake like a scent and like the memory of being very young and laughed at only when it improved the laughter, Tyrion called for the boy who had brought the wine, or one like him. The boy came and took the sealed letter and did not ask a question. That was another thing about Dorne, apparently. Some of the children had already learned to carry not only towels but plans. The boy's small feet went pattering down a hallway that insisted on being too long for its own width. A breeze moved through and into the room as if it had learned this building's lessons long ago and came again now to rehearse them. A raven would not fly straight from the water gardens to the eyrie. The world loved its detours. Tyrion loved and feared them too, somewhere in the Vale. A girl did a careful thing with a comb and told herself a careful story in a voice that did not sound altogether like her own. He imagined that voice, not in dreams but in the afternoon, when the sun's patience can be a weight as much as a bomb. Far to the northeast, winter clung to the ribs of the mountains. The eyrie was a white nail driven into a blue finger of sky, the passes below it like brown cords pulled taut. In a small solar whose windows drank the sun and tamed it, Elaine Stone sat, and someone who had once been Sansa Stark kept her company as a ghost that did not interfere except occasionally to turn her head. Elaine Stone wore her hair in a way that made it seem to sit there of its own accord. The girl who had been Sansa had once believed hair could behave. She had learned that hair behaves about as much as a heart does. There were letters on the table, unsealed, from someone who called himself a bard but who wrote like a man who preferred to count. There were lists of flour and barley. There was a small tin of nutmeg stolen from a kitchen that belonged to a lord who said he did not steal. There were lemons wrapped in a cloth to keep them from the jealousy of the heir. They were like small suns fallen into her hands. She loved them more than was reasonable. Lord Baelish had gone down to the gates of the moon 2 days ago to inspect certain ledgers and certain men. When he went away, he left the world tidier and messier both. You like to say, he had murmured to her the night before, in the tone of young mouth to older ear, that lists are a happiness. Make me happy while I travel. Tell me how much flour we have cleaned into the barrels and how many casks of wine will be sent for the feast. Tell me how many of our men were heard to whistle this week. I do like a cheerful garrison. He had touched her cheek as if it were a coin to be tested by tooth. Perhaps something sweet as well. Cakes, would you say? I say, she had said, because she was Elaine and Elaine could tell men who wanted to be lied to exactly how beautiful their lies were. That the cakes will remember you. Now she listened to the footfall in the hall and did not look up because a woman in her position learned quickly how to put just enough friction in her gestures to make people believe she was not waiting. The steward entered, the one with 3 names depending upon who needed to place him. To her he was Miles because a short name was easier to remember when it was not the whole of a man. He placed the folded letter on the table and stepped back with a deference that could have been learned only by long practice or by an instinct for safety so deep he had forgotten it was an instinct. For the mistress, he said. From whom? She asked, because sometimes Elaine asked for information she already had, and sometimes she asked for information she did not need, kept everyone's roles from ossifying. It came with the night singer, Miles said. He left at daybreak before the sunrise, for the sun here glowers at performers. He almost smiled. He asked if your name was Elaine. I told him it was. He asked if you take lemons with your cakes. I told him you do. Thank you, she said, without looking up, and he left. And when the door had closed, she reached for the letter and felt her fingers remember a feel they had not told her they remembered. The slight tack of wax cooling, the pressure that had sealed it. It was not a rose or a helpless animal. It was a small geometrical shape she did not understand. She moved a little farther from the door, not because she feared the door, but because this position gave the window the excuse to lay light on her hand. She broke the seal. She read. The words were simple. Their crevices were not. She felt not surprise, but the sensation a word gives you when you know you have heard it before but cannot place the mouth that said it. She read again. She set her fingertips against the table. She had baked when she was a girl in Winterfell for the memory of a mother, who moved through a room like winter sunlight, touching but not stopping. She had baked in King's Landing in a kitchen that smelled like garlic and resentment. She had baked in a place where her stomach hurt, and a woman whose kindness had bruises brought her flour and told her to be patient with her own hands. It had been a way to be a person when being a person had been taken from her. Within the letter, the writer had put an idea of warmth that was not vulgar. He had put a way for her to remember that warmth without thinking of bedchambers and the work done in them or in spite of them. There was a line about pines and birds that made her think of a day when she had been smaller and had dragged a branch across snow to make a design only she could see, one that the snow later forgot. She did not know who had written it. She guessed. She placed the letter under the tin of nutmeg, because the weight of nutmeg is exactly enough to keep a secret where it belongs, and not where it is imprisoned. When Miranda came in, Miranda, who had a talent for putting herself between you and your second thought, Elaine was measuring flour. Miranda put a hip against the table and a set of teeth into a slice of pear and watched her as if watching were a game that never bored her. "You have taken lemons with your breakfast," she observed. "You noticed?" Elaine said, and weighed with her eye the heap of flour she had made as if it were snow and might begin to drift. "I notice everything," Miranda said. "I noticed that the Septon's youngest nephew sleeps with his hands clenched because he dreams he is holding a rope. I noticed that Miles has a soft spot for dull women. I noticed that the singer left early, and that he did not leave his hat behind because he can only keep his hats when he is fleeing." "You notice too much," Elaine said mildly, and sifted. The air became a little cloud, and they both watched it settle. "Go and tell the cook to slice the pears more thinly. We are not feeding a giant." "We may be," Miranda said, but she went, and Elaine watched her go, and in the watching noticed how she herself had changed. Once she had thought noticing was a way to feel like a queen in a place where you are a child. Now she saw that noticing was a way to keep the world from slicing you lengthwise. She did not open the letter again, but she did not fold it farther away. That evening she baked the cakes and ate one, and she told herself she ate it because it was sweet. In Sunspear the day deepened and saw a prince in his chair, said to itself that this was the portrait of a patient man, and then kept its patience with him. Dorne Martell sat until 3 flies had completed their circuit of the arm of his chair, a measure of time that suited him, before nodding for Hoda to call in the next petitioner. The petitions were not all for oranges or grain. They were for quiet wars. Someone had a goat that had looked at a child the wrong way. Someone else had a sister who had looked too long at an officer on a road. He adjudicated lightly, and where he could not be just, he was at least consistent. There is a kind of justice in making your mistakes the same way each time. When the last petitioner had bowed backward and turned and gone in relief, he said to Hoda, "The Lannister is useful." Hoda's beard moved as he breathed. "He is dangerous even sitting." "All men are dangerous even lying down," Dorne said. "Few realize this before it is too late." "He will not stay long," Hoda said. "Men like that cannot make stillness last. They begin to itch, and that itch is contagious." "I will have him long enough," Dorne murmured. He closed his eyes. He was thinking of ships. He was thinking of the way quills squeak when you hold them a hair too fiercely. He wanted, and in the act of wanting allowed himself the thought of his brother for a continuous breath, to have the man stand in a courtyard with the sun on him and argue with Oberyn until one of them went laughing into the cool. Fools, dear fools. He did not open his eyes until he had finished wanting. Then he said, "Arrange for Arianne to have him to supper. She will think I am letting her play with a toy. She will try not to. She will fail. She will learn. She will teach too." He arranged his fingers in steeples and considered them. "And send a message to Lady Illyrian. She knows how to host envoys whose names she has not yet learned to pronounce. She will send them farther north than many of our own would dare." Areo Hoda inclined his head. He did not understand the north, and had no taste to. He did not need to. He filed orders under the ridge of his attention the way he filed threat. "It shall be done," he said, and would make it be so, because his life had been arranged to bring into existence the wishes of a quiet man. That evening Tyrion sat at a table where the food had the grace to be simple and the spices the care to be complex. People named him nothing and spoke to him, as if his presence were a captured bird they did not wish to startle into flying in a foolish direction. Arion took the place to his right with an ease that may have been theatrical and may have been practice. She wore a dress the color of a dawn that promised heat instead of cloud. To his left sat a boy who had discovered his mustache and decided to wear it as if it were a small title. The boy spoke too loudly about horses. It pleased Tyrion to have at least one person at table behave with the gift of foolishness. Arion took a date between two fingers, opened it, pitted it with a small silver skewer, and placed a segment of soft cheese inside. She offered it to him and he took it, because there is a time to refuse sweets and a time to accept what is offered you in front of men who cannot keep their eyes from measuring a woman's hands. "You look like one of our orphans rinsed up and wearing a lion's ring in his shirt," she said where only he could hear. "Do not let the children near the ring," he said. "It will only cut them." "I do not let children near sharp things," she said. "I do not let men near them either, it seems, but I am learning." "There is a song about you," Tyrion said. "There are several," she replied. "At least 2 are lies. The others are lies in more interesting clothes." "And what song will you write about me?" he asked. "When this is over?" She chewed slowly, appreciated the date, then chose her words with the same care. "That you brought a hungry road to my father and asked us to send food to it. That you looked at a northern girl through a southern window and did not mistake your desire for her safety. That you sat in a room and did not drink an entire flagon compulsively. That you laughed the way men laugh in sandstorms, defiantly and with grit in it. And if we fail, then I will make it a better song," she said. "Because sadness makes poets honest." The boy on his other side had finished describing a stallion as if it were a brother he had invented. He leaned and saw the dates and said something about women and sweets that made Arion still without hardening. Tyrion said something cheerful and ugly enough to change the direction of the boy's thought, and the boy paused, uncertain whether he had been insulted, and then decided he had not, because to decide otherwise would have forced him to do a sum he could not perform. He spoke instead about spears. Tyrion smiled and lifted his cup. After supper came music. The courtyard's tiles gave back the notes as if they had been laid for the purpose. A woman danced because it was her pleasure to do it. Men watched as if she had made the room and the song out of herself. Tyrion listened with that part of the mind that never surrendered entirely to wine or song. And then, when he had allowed himself 3 measures of something like ease, he excused himself without ceremony and went to his room to stare at nothing and let the nothing begin to arrange itself into a plan he had already set in motion, but that required rehearsal in the skull as well. Some in Dorne slept in the afternoon and did their waking afterwards. That night, in the water gardens, the moon made itself into a servant of all those lying quietly. In the Eyrie, the moon made itself a hard white coin and laid its light on a tower where a girl leaned at a window that opened onto air like a truer sea than the one that washed Old Town's quays. The wind laid its cold hands upon her. She let it, because it had no intention of making her into anything more than a person who knew how to lean. "Elaine," said a voice below and beyond the wall, and she moved to see who might be out in such weather. It was Miles, walking a patrol he was not obliged to walk because he could not sleep when there were uncounted things in the world. He tipped a hand. "Do you dislike beds that much?" Elaine called, and her voice did not shiver. "I have known beds to trap a man," he said. "Besides, there are singers' rumors to count." "And how many tonight?" she asked. "None," he said, and his hook of a smile twitched. "Which is precisely how I prefer my music." "Then we will get along," she replied. He walked on. She let the night wash through her. She wondered how many nights it would take for a woman to be persuaded to move not only her body but her name. She had found herself as often by remaining as by leaving. She did not open the letter again. She went to the chest where she kept certain unnoteworthy things and put the letter down upon them and told herself softly that there are horses that do not bolt when they smell apples. In White Harbor, a man fatter than he needed to be and smarter than he had to be sat over a bowl of fish stew and thought about crimes like a merchant thinks about edges. The Winter King who lived within Wyman Mandalay was awake and yawning. He had a memory for the taste of being insulted. In the harbor, a ship lay with oranges in its hold. Its captain, a man who had been to Dorne once and liked its food but not its heat, had been instructed to wait. He did not like to wait. He had been bribed to like it and found that coin, unlike many other fashions, suited him. "Bring him to me," Manderly said around a spoonful. "Bring the Dornish hawker. I will listen to his song about lemons." "There is no song," his steward protested. "Then that is the song," Manderly said. He did not smile. He did not need to. The corners of his mouth were built for other purposes. On the other side of that stubborn peninsula geography had made without consulting anyone. A man with a face like cautious parchment sat in a room with tapestries too busy with flowers to be truly grand. Peter Baelish turned a ring on his finger and listened to a different part of the world breathe. He had been told long ago that you can tell a room's intentions by how it smells in the hour before dawn. This room smelled like dust and a little like envy. He did not mind. He was writing. He had a talent for it when he believed paper would do what he wanted. He wrote a letter to a lord who thought himself too proud to be bought and included a paragraph to show how he did not believe that pride existed. And he wrote another letter to a woman who preferred poetry and included 3 lines that made claims about hearts he knew to be anatomically impossible. He wrote a third letter to no one and left it unsealed, because sometimes leaving a thing unfinished in plain sight is a way to bring the right eyes into the room. He did not know about the letter under the nutmeg. He would, not yet. He rubbed his thumb against the ring and rehearsed the moment when he would tell the girl who had been Sansa Stark that he had done something for her that made him a villain and her a queen. He practiced his mouth for it. The world practiced mishearing him. He put the letters aside and leaned back and let the chair's stiff back make him sit the way he would like others to imagine him to be. Back in Dorne, Tyrion slept. His mouth opened slightly the way a child's does when the day has been longer than the child had believed possible. He dreamed of snow rising like tide in rooms that were not built for such incursions. He dreamed of a face made of dawn, and of an apple too bright to be real, and of the sound a crossbow makes when it wants to be an instrument instead of a tool. He woke to a hand at his door and a message slid under, a thin blade of paper. He took it and read, "A raven to Manderly has been sent. The poet with pears is in place." He read the words and saw in them the footprints of Arianne. He folded the paper and put it with the others, together making a noise like thin leaves when he tapped them against his palm. On the 3rd morning in the water gardens, he found himself cornered by 3 girls with more attitude than jewels. The eldest had eyes like hot coals when the wind has their number. The second had a mouth that tried to become a weapon and had not yet achieved it. The third was dangerous because she still thought she was about to become dangerous and so was not cautious. He knew their kind, not because he had met them in Dorne, but because he had met them in selfishness and in prisons he had made for himself. He gave them each a joke like a small glass bead. 2 of them laughed. 1 sneered. The sneer he put in his pocket on the off chance he might one day need it. "You are the lion who stops being a lion when someone looks as if they expect you to be one," the eldest said. "I am the lion who was told he belonged in a zoo and ran away to join a river," Tyrion said. "You are the man who married a child and never touched her," the second one said, intending to draw blood. "You are a child who uses her mouth like a spear," Tyrion said softly, and the girl blinked, surprised not at the rebuke but at the absence of rage in it. Tyrion held her gaze for a heartbeat. "There is a time to thrust, and a time to ask a friend to hold your arm and show you where the meat is. You love her," the third said, not triumphantly but with the curiosity of a scientist who has witnessed a chemistry she had suspected all along. "I love the idea that there exist in the world persons who were not made by the same very tired hands," he said, "and that accidents sometimes make better prayers than the ones we would have written for ourselves." "He is useless," the eldest declared, but she did not make it convincing. "Wait and see," the second said. "I am already waiting," the third replied, and then, to Tyrion, with a sweetness he believed was half a test and half a talent, "You will dine with us. We will speak of horses, and you will pretend not to know you are being harried." "Your hospitality overwhelms me," Tyrion said. "It is meant to," the eldest said. He sat with them and suffered their knives and found that they were cleverer when they were playful and dangerous when they decided to become serious. He liked them, the way a man who has misplaced his childhood likes to encounter it again in hostile forms. When he was alone again, he drafted the nutmeg letter sister. He wrote east and north and a little west, and if he had had a compass, he would have broken it and drawn the points himself. He no longer wished to prove to anyone in King's Landing what he already knew. He wanted instead to build a complicated friendship between the pole under a swaying tent in a cold landscape and the river that remembered other rivers. He wanted to make the word alliance sound like a bowl of soup in a room full of people who do not know one another's names yet. On the 7th day, news came that a Dornish ship had anchored off a harbor whose stones were colder than the ice they used to keep fish. Wyman Manderley ate an orange and made a face his wife loved and his enemies feared. He asked for the men to be shown in. He had them wait. He wanted them to learn patience, as all men do when winter is closing the door on their knees. "Your letter," Arion said to Tyrion the next night, "has become 2 letters and a song brought by a man who pretends not to limp. It moves. I cannot yet tell in what direction. In the way water moves when it is persuaded, not order of the Kingsguard commanded," Tyrion said. "In channels, in new beds. My father says that if I am to go north, I should learn to wear more clothes," she mused. He meant it as a jest and a warning, which is his favorite combination. "I would rather you learn to carve a piece of cold meat with a warm knife," Tyrion said. "The clothes will come, so will the knife, perhaps." "You talk," she said, but there was no contempt in it. "And Titan's daughters push boats with words." "They do," Tyrion agreed. "How else would the boats know where to go?" "I can see her," Arion said then, unexpectedly. "Up high, a girl with a nose that is honest. She thinks of cakes more than is sensible. She wants to make a bargain with herself in which she is allowed to love someone and not be punished. Her name is a talisman. She is bored of being a talisman." Arion lifted a hand to her own hair and smoothed it back as if smoothing someone else's. "If she comes to me, I will be gentle. If she does not, I will be another thing." "Both things are useful," Tyrion said, his voice softer than he had intended, and could not tell whether it was because he was imagining Sansa in his mind's eye or because he was imagining Arion imagining Sansa and the kindness in it. Later, under the same moon that had stood over Elaine and called itself Coin and over Sunspear and called itself Permission, Tyrion walked the courtyard with Hoda. It was not a thing he would have predicted he would enjoy, that shuffle of a long-axed man who may as well have been a pillar and himself a man half the size who had become in his latter days more than he had wanted to be of a pillar. "You have been to war," Tyrion said. "Not the sort that happens in ballads. The sort that happens where the dirt does not care who you cut in it. How do you do it in the mind?" Hoda's beard and the long axe moved together in a small affirmative. "You do not make the mind do it. You make the legs do it. You make the arms do it. The mind comes later and tells the story so that you can sleep. So you lie to yourself. So you call it something else," Hoda said. "It is the difference between a man who calls his weapon friend and the man who calls his weapon hand." "And which are you?" "I am the man who calls his weapon necessary," Hoda said, and he did not say the other thing, that he knew himself to be a weapon as well. They parted there without ceremony. In the small hours, Tyrion woke to the sound of his own breath. He had been dreaming of corridors and doors and the way his father's eyes had felt without their lenses. He went to the window and saw a world carefully building the dawn out of threads. He leaned his head against the cool stone as if it were a friend. By the 10th day, it had begun to happen. Rumors sprouting like mushrooms in damp shade. In the markets of Sunspear, women who sold oranges instead of apples and apples instead of oranges emptied themselves of gossip into their customers' hands as they made change. A ship left the Planky Town at dusk, and everyone in Planky Town knew it but did not know where it was going and did not need to know to take satisfaction in having known the leaving. In Gulltown, a man with a plain face rubbed his ankle as he sang in a voice that turned the room warmer than it had been. He did not sing about the north. He sang about a girl who had been forced to wear a crown made of frost and had traded it for a hat made of gull feathers and for lemons kept in a cloth. In Winterfell's shadow, a man who had shaved his throat carefully woke to a rumor that he would have sworn he had started himself. In White Harbor, Manderley listened to a PR proposal that concerned oranges not in the crates presently before him, but in crates imagined, to be delivered on a day when the wind behaved. He pretended this did not interest him. He asked after the ship's draft and its past masters. He asked whether the men knew how to sow sail and whether they had ever eaten pine despite calling it an herb. He asked whether the man had been to Dorne and whether the women there had hair like night and whether the men there insisted on wearing scarves. He laughed then, loud and honest and false and all the ways a laugh can be and still be itself. "Tell Prince Doran," he said finally, "that if he wishes to impress the North, he will do it not with loricated oranges wrapped in compliments, but with salt fish when the ice begins, and with men who know how to stack firewood like a prayer. Tell him that if he wishes to make himself a story we tell after dinner, he should lend us a ship when the narrow sea begins to remember what weather can do. And tell him that if he wants us to remember Elia Martell as if she were our own lost, he will send someone who speaks of her like a person and not a wound." The envoy, who was not yet a true envoy but a traitor with a letter, bowed. He had a sense that he had just been measured and found be both lighter and more truthful than expected. He liked that feeling. He did not like the cold. He rubbed his hands and accepted a cup of something steaming that was more oil than broth and yet warmed him. Back in the Vale, Elaine baked, the lemon's peel zest under her hands with a cheerful sting. In the sniffing of the air's bright edge she felt, for a moment that was too brief and therefore perfect, unobserved and ungoverned. She took the cakes from the oven and placed them where the light would make them shine. She divided them and sent the precise number to the rooms of men who would feel singled out and thus manageable. She kept one aside. She sat and ate it with deliberation and a calm that made her hands slow. She thought of the letter and of the paragraph about pines that had seemed an accidental kindness. She thought of a man's clever mouth and of the way clever men sometimes get lost behind their own cleverness, the way a forest can lose a deer. She did not know what she would do. She knew that she could do something. She had not known that yesterday. When Peter returned, he found her in the small garden where the hardy things grew. She had put her hands on the earth in an act of supposed idleness. He watched her for a measure of time that, in another man, would have been called an indulgence, and in him was simply practice. He approached with a creaking of the gravel that had announced him. He looked at her as one looks at a picture to which one has commissioned a rewrite. "There you are," he said, as if the fact of her there was the primary fact, which it was in a room he preferred to be the one who names facts. "You smell like lemon." "It's a smell that lingers," she said. "Some do." "Indeed," he said, and smiled as a locksmith smiles. "Have any singers come to you? I confess I had hoped for a particularly ridiculous one. I do like them ridiculous. It makes one feel the songs are not entirely spite." "Only the pear seller with the limp," she said lightly, "and a smell of bay in his pockets." He sang of the sea being a mother. It was a dull song. "Ah," he said, "I prefer dull to clever in bards. Clever is competition." He did not ask for the letter. He always would, but not yet. He would taste the air for it before he asked the mouth. At night he went through her rooms not like a lover but like a thief of time, tidying, moving a small object the length of a finger and then moving it back. He found the nutmeg. He knew the weight of nutmeg, and yet his fingers did not tell him what rested beneath it, because Elaine had not put the letter under the nutmeg anymore. She had moved it to the hollow inside a dried gourd that hung among others as a decoration or a joke. He could not read it because he had not yet remembered to listen to the gourd. In Dorne, Morsdane came, and with him his mouth that never learned to close around its own laughter. He embraced Tyrion as who one calls cousin even when the family tree did not justify such warmth. He kissed her cheeks and then put his hands on her shoulders and held her away as if she were a prize he had bought in an early and unwise hour and now was glad to see again without obligation. "I am told," he announced in a room too public for Tyrion's taste, "that we are to ally with wolves. I dislike wolves on principle. They remind me that I am edible." "You are edible," Tyrion said without smiling. "We all are, save perhaps Hoda," who looks gamey. Hoda allowed his eyes to show a fraction of humor. It made the room a degree safer without surrendering any of his threat. Mors bowed to Tyrion with a flourish he had practiced at cups many nights and perfected at doors many mornings. "My lord, you are smaller than the stories. That is how I prefer my stories, though. Large stories are for men who have not yet learned to eat." "I am the concentrated kind," Tyrion said. "You must dilute me with water before drinking." Arianne put her hand on Mors's sleeve and said low, "You are to go north." "I am to go north," Mors agreed, rolling his eyes toward the ceiling in theatrical despair. "It offends me. I have never liked my beard frozen, and I dislike fur unless it is alive and attached to an animal I can watch be unhappy." "You will enjoy it," she said. "You will flirt with women who do not remember that is what it is called." "I will be killed by a roast," he complained, "and you will pretend to mourn. It will be all the same to me then." He left the next day with a small company that pretended to be larger by virtue of clever banners. Tyrion watched them go from a terrace. He placed a hand on the stone and felt the warmth stored in it. He thought of the world as a person. He had done that often, made landscapes where faces to make them less hateful, but never had it felt as literal. Dorne, a woman in a longer dress than other women, with eyes that waited before they narrowed, and the north, a cold uncle who had earned his harshness with winter's sad logic and was now weary of hearing that explanation. He began to write again, not letters this time, not yet, but notes to himself in a tiny, precise hand. He wrote a list of names, none of which were the names of lords. He wrote that a certain cook in Gulltown had a sister who once served in the Red Keep and had not been paid. He wrote that a priest in the mountains had learned to forgive too much because he had outlived the men who would have punished him for it. He wrote that Manderley would do the right thing if the right thing resembled a good dinner. "Well?" Arianne asked when she found him thus occupied. She stood with her hip leaned into the corner of the table, her hand splaying her skirt against her thigh as if to make the fabric remember grace. "Is it all mountains and songs in your head now?" "It is a map of kitchens," he said. "I have always found wars are decided in kitchens, between the moment the man with a sword puts his hand on his belt and the moment he puts his hand on the bread." She came nearer, and he read in her the thing he had come to rely upon, that she would give him space to say a thing, and then she would take it away if the thing bored her. "And will you tell me, dwarf, why you do not weep?" "Because I am not finished," he said. "Because weeping is a kind of period. Because I am afraid that if I begin I will be a man who cannot take his mouth off his own grief." "I could love you," she said, and made it not a promise or a threat but a possible pastime. "I am too little for you," he said, amusement sweetening it. "I have been hungry," she said. They did not touch. They did not need to. The world had enough touching in it already. She left him a fruit on the table that was old enough to have developed a complexity a younger piece of fruit would have been blind to. He ate it, and his mouth learned 3 kinds of sweetness in a row. By the time Morsdane reached Old Town, which he had not meant to go to but went to anyway because rumor had put itself on the road like a sign that could not be ignored, he had learned how many kinds of cloak a man can wear before he thinks himself invisible. He had also learned that people in the South who have not been to the North believe that the North is an ice sculpture that never melts, and people in the North who have not been to the South believe that Dorne is a bedchamber with fruit in it. He laughed more now because laughing is as good a way of preparing for cold as whiskey is, and he would not drink. He thought of Arianne, who had given him a pair of gloves and a warning you would give a man you intend to let live. He tightened the gloves and looked at the sea. Letters intersected and parted and intersected again across the land like skeins of thread tossed in a deliberate chaos. Men who carried them sometimes smelled of horses and sometimes of ink. Women who read them sometimes shrugged them into their apron pockets and sometimes hid them in the folds of books they did not intend to finish. More than once, a letter failed to arrive where it was meant to go. That, too, was part of the music. Tyrion received a note folded into the shape of a fish, which would have been ridiculous but for the fact that being ridiculous is a way to move in the world without being halted. He opened it and found 3 words in a hand he recognized from 2 towns away. Manderley requests patience. He smiled and made a mark on his private map. He slept that night on a pallet by the window where the moon made his foot a white object, unfamiliar and therefore new. He dreamed of a girl in fur who held out a lemon and refused to say what she wanted in exchange. "Tell me," he said when he next sat with Dorne. The afternoon so quiet it disturbed him. "Why do you care?" "Because when a man tells you he does not care what happened to babies, he is asking you to permit him to behave as if you are a piece of furniture," Dorne said. "Because the world told me patience is a virtue and then punished me with it. Because love is the inconvenience that keeps a man honest in his head after he has been forced to be dishonest in his acts. And because it will be amusing to undo certain knots from the other end," Tyrion suggested. "And that," Dorne allowed, a glint that might have been laughter crossing the slow sea of his eyes. "Shall I send another letter?" Tyrion asked. "I am not out of paper yet, and the nutmegs of the Vale are in good order." "Wait," Dorne said. "Wait to send it, but write it now. Make the writing your proof to yourself that the waiting is not without occupation." Tyrion wrote. This time he wrote about anger that is not rage but is a kind of clear weather. He wrote about not forgiving men who ask forgiveness as a theatrical act. He wrote, not for Sansa alone now, but for himself perhaps a little, and for Arianne, whom he expected to do something disgraceful soon and be wise while doing it. A week later, news came that a party had begun the climb to the Eyrie with a cargo of spices and a generous inclination to shelter people from their wind. Within the party, whose leader believed himself to be a man of consequence and was in consequence never trusted with consequence, walked a woman with a face disguising intent by the simple act of being ordinary. When they reached the halfway house where the heir learns to make men small, she left the group on a pretext involving a rope and a memory. She did not return until dawn. When asked where she had been, she said she had been counting stars to see if there were enough to merit such a climb. The men laughed. They told one another she had chosen a silly part of the sky to count. She knew because a man in a different scarf had told her across a bowl of broth that a letter had moved from a pantry to a person. In the Eyrie, Elaine folded a paper into a square and placed it beneath a cloth that smelled of rosemary. It said, in a hand she knew that certain ships may be relied upon in winter and certain men in summer, and that the admonition to keep your head down is sometimes a trap. It did not say to run. It said to listen. She listened. To the stone. To the wind. To the way Peter breathed when he was pleased with himself, and to the way he did not breathe when he intended to be pleased with himself later. She found, in the patient work, the form of a person distinct from the one who had been queen when she was a child. She began to be dangerous. She did not rush at it. She put a hand on it the way one learns to put a hand on a horse's neck, and when it did not flinch, she allowed herself to stroke once. In the water gardens the children played loudly, and Dorne slept for an hour in the afternoon and woke weeping quietly for a minute, and then found that he was, after all these years, not ashamed of doing so. He wiped his eyes and asked for tea and was pleased it had been brewed properly. He asked for the news. The news told him that the world had, at last, begun to consider the possibility of a story not told in the capital. He did not smile. He closed his eyes again and saw his brother's grin and his sister's lips. He said aloud, "We will do this in my way," and the room did not argue with him. Tyrion walked through a small orchard at the edge of the gardens where the air was heavier and the trees insisted on being trees and not metaphors. He plucked an orange and rolled it in his hand and then put it back, ashamed of taking things simply because they were there. He looked up and saw Arianne watching him from between two branches. Her hair had come loose and made the kind of quiet he liked. "I am bored," she said. "Entertain me." "I have run out of variations on jokes about my size," he replied. "Then we will tell jokes about your sorrows," she said, with a lightness that was not cruel. "That is what courts are for, they tell me." "Then I will tell you one," he said. "Once there was a man who found a door where there was only a wall before. He did not know where the door went. He opened it. He saw a city. He closed it. He thought of the city. He told himself a story about how he would be received there. He opened the door again. The room beyond had reassembled itself into a new city. He closed it. He went away. Years later he returned. He opened the door. There was at last a room beyond, not a city. And there was a person in the room who had waited there for him. She had a basket of lemons. He sat and did not know how to begin. She handed him a lemon. He began. "Your jokes," Tyrion said, "are poems that are a little too full." "It is a disease," Tyrion said. "I hope not," she said, and lifted the branch with her hand to make for herself a crown. "I would hate to think we were all catching it." "Then let us hope it is a weather," he said, and stood in the orchard with her, neither of them touching the oranges because at last they had learned that leaving a fruit to inherit its own sweetness can be a gift to it, and perhaps to themselves. In the north, the days misbehaved. The river boiled up under ice in places and remained quiet in others. Pieces of news arrived ill-dressed and had to be dressed by the people who heard them. Someone said that Manderley ate fraise, and someone said he ate oranges, and someone said those two things amount to the same when you consider the season. Lord Roche was told by a traitor he would normally have refused to have in his hall that Dorne was offering salt and men who could go a day without complaining about the temperature. He laughed and dismissed the traitor and then asked the steward to make certain his people were rationed 3 pieces of dried fruit each that evening. He did not say why. He did not need to. At the wall, a man looked at the world as if it were a friend and a liar both. Jon Snow stood and felt the wind change hands. He received a message from a place he'd never been. The message was not words at first. It was the feel of sand under a boot when the boot does not belong to that land. It was the taste of oranges on a tongue that preferred meat and snow. It was a vow he had made that did not move like other vows. When he opened the small, folded piece of paper that came with the feeling, he found that vows sometimes do take the form of paper. He read about the possibility of men south of the desert deciding they preferred not to be told what kind of men they were by men who had never seen the desert. He folded the paper again and put it under something unimportant. He went to find a friend and failed, and then found another friend. He did not speak of oranges because it would have made him feel silly. He spoke instead of wind. Somewhere, as all this happened in its careful way, Cersei Lannister paced a room and told herself a story in which the world had finally learned that the only people who mattered were the people who had learned how to matter. Varys listened to someone who believed he was invisible chew and waited until the chewing stopped to speak. A cell's word in the east weighed 2 men in his head and decided to charge both double. The small folk of King's Landing quit 3 jobs and took 3 others and did not consider whether this counted as a revolution. A septa who had saved a small coin and put it under a pillow moved the coin to a pocket and then spent the coin on honey and afterward told herself she had thereby performed a kind of piety. Spring tried across the land. Winter refused to let it, like a parent who finds the house dirty after all. The world felt the tug of war, and those who knew anything about the world did not pretend to be surprised. In Sunspear, the gardens did not argue why. Take the sea. They invited it to see how children play with water when they know it will not die on them. Tyrion wrote one more letter. He addressed it to no one. He wrote the words he had not known how to write in the letter to Elaine. He wrote, "This is my fault, and that is my fault, and here are the things which my fault has learned to do so it will not die." He did not send it. He burned it and took pleasure in the decent smell of the burning, which was something like silk and something like regret. Then he went to Tyrion and said, "It is time to gamble." "We have been gambling," she said. "No," he said. "We have been choosing our chairs before we sat at the table. Now we will put down an ante and smile as if the cards we hold are larger than they are." "What ante?" "Information," he said. "We will tell someone in King's Landing something that will frighten them, and we will watch to see to whom they run. We will give it a name like truth, and it will, perhaps, contain some." Tyrion stretched her back as a cat does, not to show anything to anyone but to make her body remember it did not have to be a statue when it was alone. "And who is this someone?" "A man who has never believed himself to be anyone and so has learned to be everyone," Tyrion said. "We will give him a piece of news about a girl with a claim sewn into her name and tell him what he will earn by taking it to a queen who thinks a crown is a knife." "You mean a little bird," she said. "I do," he replied. "And if he flies clean over the capital and never returns, then we will have learned what birds love," he said, and smiled with an unhandsome sincerity. "Very well," Arion said. "Let us frighten someone. I grow tired of being quiet." Doran sighed when they told him. "Children playing in the surf," he said. "Promise me you will not drown." "I promise we will teach a fish to breathe air," Arion said. And Doran held her face in his eyes for a heartbeat and let go, which is to say, a plan turned from a river to a canal. Letters turned from suggestions to invitations. Food turned into loyalty in several kitchens. At least one child in Plankytown met a ship from the Summer Isles and decided to run away in 2 years' time. A man in King's Landing did not sleep for 2 nights because he had been told that a girl who had been married to a man he hated would be used against him in a game he had not even known was being played. A raven misjudged the distance between 2 towers and rested in a tree and dreamed of fish. And in a room where the moon came not as a servant but as a terrible and beautiful spy, Elaine closed her eyes and imagined a road through the mountains not as a threat but as a path a girl might take and come home at the end of. She placed the 3rd letter upon the 2nd and the 2nd upon the 1st and tied them with a ribbon the color of the sea when it pretends to be shallow. She went to the window and looked out and saw, as if for the first time, that the world contains as many kinds of light as it does kinds of darkness. In Sunspear, Tyrion Lannister, who had once been a man who only laughed because the alternative was weeping, laughed and wept. He did not forget this time to put his hand over his mouth when he did so. He did not forget to listen for footsteps in the wake of his breath. He thought of Sansa and of a lemon and of a winter that might at last find itself warmed by a sun that had nothing to do with the capital. He thought of Arianne and of the way she had looked at the north as if it were an idea she could seduce into decency. He thought of Doran, who did not move unless it was entirely necessary, and of Hoda, who did not need to move to be a threat, and of himself, who had begun at last to suspect that not every door a man opens is meant for him to walk through first. Then he went to the writing table, and he began to write again, slowly, as if his hand were building a dock where ships would come whether or not he stood there to watch them arrive.